provided 24/7. Oh, yes. And additionally, we're grateful for our supporters, all supporters, and in particular, our financial supporters, our encouragers of thoughts, words, and or deeds. To our listeners, we're also equally grateful for their continued time and attention. To those of whom that may have tuned in for the first time on this day, we say welcome and hope you come again. To all others, thank you for your continued time and attention. Oh, yes, indeed. To tune in, our dial is 107.9 FM. To click in, that is RTH2000.com. To call in from anywhere in the U.S., that is 641-793-8228. So, brothers and sisters, listening host one and all, how was your week? Any time spent in prayer, meditation, devotion, and intercession? Terrific. Oh, yes, indeed. ¿Qué pasa? ¿Y su familia? Amigos? Amore? Como allez-vous? Famille, amis, chéris. Poise, koyen ya, y fil, agapitos. Todos bon? Bueno. And listen, brothers and sisters, listening host, one and all, on this day indeed, we are joined by our special guest, and that is Attorney Jillian Hoffman. Jillian, what a pleasure to have you join us once more to provide us with our update. Yeah, Jillian?
Hi, thank you guys so much for having me. I hope everybody's staying safe and healthy.
Oh, yes, indeed. Thank you so much. Before we get started, may I suggest, brothers and sisters, listening host one and all, based on the nature of what we'll be discussing on this day, immigration law, as it may pertain to you directly or indirectly, if a family member and or friends, we'll give you an opportunity to pull paper and pen so you may take notes or so as you see fit. We'll be discussing shortly a varied amount of topics. But I want to bring something to your attention by way of my personal journey, and that is, as I've shared in the past, for those of whom that have been here before, that in my earlier years back home in Jamaica, one of the most challenging time for me or for my family directly was when there were so little funds, especially so little funds. And I remember what we were able to consume at that time. Awesome. Hard dough bread and poured on the hard dough bread condensed milk. And to this day, I still enjoy that as a nice little meal for me, as such. And I'm also reminded of just this very past week as I was traveling about and I was stopped at a red sign, and when I looked to my left, I saw this very young lady. It doesn't matter gender or so forth, but just specific to the situation. And around her, surrounding her, she was sitting on the ground in front of a closed retail store. Around her, surrounded her, were cards and so forth of what seems to be all her personal possessions. And, you know, I say that to say that I remember as a little child growing up and the opportunity my then mother, rest in peace, mother gave to us to come to the U.S. One of the things I was told of us is that the streets being paved in gold and the financial funds that are available as such. And so to see that and to hear that, we know it's not an isolated case, but it's just an example of what exists around us and elsewhere. And so I ask you at this time to listen to the lyrics of this song. However, there is only one sentence in the lyric, one word within one sentence you might not understand, and that is because it's spoken in Patois. And that particular word is duit. That means do it. But everything else is in English, as in direct English. So listen to the lyrics. Don't go anywhere. Grab a paper and pen in the meantime. Thank you. We'll be right back.
Life is so hard. is never an empty, but you never seem to give thanks to no. I see fatherless children with hungry faces, dying for something to eat, but you never yet lift a finger to help. Tell me, big man, how you do it? Do you really know what it is like to have no food to eat? Yet you say that your life is so soft. Do you even know what it is like to have nowhere to sleep? You should give thanks for whatever you've got. You get up every day and a curse. It's like you don't even know what your life's really worth. You never thank the Father first. And every little thing will happen, you will expect the worst. You believe in only vanity. You don't even show no love to your own family. Tell me what kind of life are you living? You only believe in taking and not giving. Give thanks for your blessings today, because tomorrow they could be taken away. Give thanks for your blessings today, because tomorrow they could be taken away. Give thanks for your blessings today, because tomorrow they could be taken away. Give thanks for your blessings today, because tomorrow they could be taken away. Do you really know what it is like to have no food to eat? Yet you say that your life is so hard. Do you even know what it is like to have nowhere to sleep? You should give thanks for whatever you've got. Do you really know what it is like to have no food to eat?
Oh, yes, brothers and sisters, listening host, one and all. You know, we do have a campaign going on with regards to Children's Needs International as we welcome you back to Our Journey, Our Strength. It's a Christ Center variety program. But with respect to Children's Needs International, it's a nonprofit organization, and our current fundraiser, which is a dire fundraiser, is to secure supplies for the children residing on the River of Tussin in Pittonsville, Haiti. If I've mispronounced any of those words, please forgive me. No amount is too small or too great. As a matter of fact, I would like to challenge each and every one, wherever you may be within the span of technology, to donate $1 per person within each household. So there's a household of 4, then $4. And can you imagine if we go even with, say, 100 people here and that's $400 to send 100% in our example to the children so that they can get foods. And again, 100% of all contributions will be sent for this life-worthy cause. And it is tax deductible, so we will be so if you can mail your contributions to CNI, 15 Prospect Street, Suite 203, East Orange, New Jersey, 0717. There actually direct deposit option is available as well, and then there will be a couple other options, payment options that we're working on that is not yet completed, and so forth. So again, your donation will be truly appreciated and will help to uplift the lives of these young children living on the river as such and needing food. You know, like I said, hunger is not a good thing. That is part of the basic essentials for each and every one of us living on this side. So thank you once more for those of us that will choose to participate on behalf of my fellow board members. Thank you for that. And I assume also in the process, those of us that may be interested in taking notes now before we get started with hearing from our immigration law attorney, I want to just give you a backdrop. First and foremost, before I tell you about her wonderful work and her experiences as such, know that as a reminder for those of us that have heard from her before and those of us that have not, the bottom line is an immigration law attorney is able to do work amongst any and all of the 50 states because immigration law pertains to federal law. So wherever you may be within the span of technology, within any of the 50 states. If you're interested in her working, you can reach out to her. Now, with Jillian Hoffman is her name, Hopman. She's been here and periodically comes here to give us updates on immigration law. She's a practicing immigration, human rights, and entertainment attorney. She's worked in immigration law since 2006, dealing with such things as specializing in removal proceedings, asylums, domestic violence, aliens of extraordinary and exceptional ability, national interest waivers, adjustments of status, naturalization, DACA, and a whole host of more. And she has many legal texts that has been written and has been honored by the Amnesty International and the Southern Poverty Law Center. And that's one small snippet of Jillian's bio. So Jillian, in the interest of time, we're going to get started, and the first topic we'll be speaking on, if you could comment and provide details and update with regards to asylum and remaining in Mexico.
Sure. So this policy it's very frustrating for immigrants and attorneys alike. There have been some updates with it. In February, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is out west, primarily in California, it put the policy on hold. However, a month later in March, the Supreme Court took that away, and it has gone forward again. They just, due to COVID, they stopped processing cases, period, and everybody was just stuck in Mexico, and now they've started to process those cases again. So they're resuming hearings there. It's just, this is an extremely difficult situation, not just with the pandemic, but in general, it is so difficult to represent people. It's difficult to represent any asylum case because it's a very complex, labor-intensive kind of case and very evidence-heavy, but it's even exponentially harder to do so when your client is in another country. And it is just, the Supreme Court hasn't made a final decision, so hopefully next term, it won't happen before the election, but hopefully next term they will deal with this one way or the other. But right now, unfortunately, it is going forward, and there are over 60,000 individuals stuck outside the United States right now trying to apply for asylum here.
Wow. But then do we not have a current president in which that's being fought about as well, as in prevented, blocked, what have you? Or do we want to cover that on the DACA and the Supreme Court rulings?
Say that one more time?
I said, do we not have a president that pretty much is trying to block all any and all goodness with this for these 60,000 individuals?
Yes, I mean, hopefully something will change in the not too distant future, but yes, this is probably, though I will say, the administration's one of their most successful policies, that in successful in terms of it majorly changed immigration law and the way that we practice it, and had tremendous hardships to the people who are going through it right now. So from the administration standpoint and their, anti-immigration policies in a lot of ways, this is probably one of their most successful policies.
Okay, which leads us then into the deferred action for childhood arrivals and the recent Supreme Court ruling, and also the guidance in the midst of their ruling, the guidance that they gave to the president that he might choose to act on. You want to provide updates on that then as well?
Yes, this is a slightly better update than the Remain in Mexico policy. And just to clarify the difference, the real name for the Remain in Mexico policy is the Migrant Protection Protocol. So anything you hear about that is basically about asylum and the Remain in Mexico policy. The Supreme Court has also made a recent decision for DACA, and this was much more favorable. This was in DHS versus the Regents of the University of California. And basically, the Supreme Court ruled that the administration ended the program arbitrarily and capriciously, meaning they did not provide a good reason for ending it. And under the Administrative Procedure Act, so it's a very technical ruling that just turns on the way that the administration basically chose to end the program without providing, a valid justification or reason for it. So the Supreme Court said right now, well, you have to revert back to basically the Obama level DACA. However, they've left it open, tremendously so, that the administration can review this and decide to end it in the future.
Oh, okay.
And over the past 2 weeks, there's been so much back and forth about this. The current acting DHS Secretary, Chad Wolf, he released a memo last week that basically rescinded their previous memos on DACA because those were the ones that the Supreme Court said this reason is not good enough. And now this new memo that came out they've decided not to end the program right now. They're doing a quote-unquote comprehensive review of the program, but they've made significant changes to it even since the Supreme Court ruled. They've now made it so you can, instead of you used to be able to apply for DACA and get 2 years of status, and they've changed that, and they've made it only 1 year renewal. And even though a judge in Maryland, after the Supreme Court said, administration, you have to start taking these applications again, they've also changed their new policy to say that they are not taking any new applications. So people who have applied before, they're basically putting all of those cases on hold for now. And I think that this is more political. They don't want to end the program before the election. Oh. So instead, they've just made it harder in general to apply, and practically speaking, no one new can apply anyway now with their changes.
Right.
But this is positive in the sense that at least people who have DACA status and the people who have current jobs, almost 500,000 people are protected by this, and they can at least keep their status and renew it for now if they need to. But this will change one way or the other depending upon who is elected. Either they will go forward, if Trump is reelected, then they will go forward and probably try to end the program again. Or if Biden is elected, they will probably try to make it a permanent program. Either way, no decision is going to be litigated back up to the Supreme Court one way or the other, and that will not happen before November. So if this is important to you, or if this is important to family members or friends, keep in mind that this is very much on the ballot in November. It is an incredibly important issue. And what is, in a way, this ruling, it's very much a short-term win for immigrants. Right now, it's great. But in the same way, the way that the Supreme Court issued the ruling, it does give the president a tremendous amount of power to change this in the future.
Exactly.
So it can be spun either way. However, for now, I'm very happy and satisfied with the ruling, and it has helped. It's not just immigrants who are benefited by DACA, it's all of the American employers and businesses who depend on these people and who have spent years training them, who would lose so much business time and money if they had to retrain people from scratch again. So a lot of people have an investment in this policy, and I really hope it becomes permanent eventually, especially because DACA, as I'm sure many of you are aware, in order to qualify, you had to come here before 2015, and you had to be under the age of 16 to apply, and you have to still be under the age of 31. So there's a lot of, requirements and rules. It's not like anybody can apply for this. It is really just to help the kids whose parents brought them here, who didn't have any choice in the matter whether they came to the United States or not. And many of them before DACA, spent their entire lives looking over their shoulders and had to live essentially as ghosts because they had no way to get basic documents like a driver's license, like a social security number. And DACA is not permanent, so it only gives you a temporary work permit, and that's really it. So it doesn't give you any kind of permanent status. It's not leading to a green card. It is literally just allowing you to work and contribute to society and go to school and get a driver's license and apply for health insurance, basic things that people need to live their everyday lives. So we will see where this goes in the future. But for now, this is a win, and I will take it.
Yes, everyone gets to stay put. Do we need to give any additional details with regards to the basics to what DACA is? Not the recent court ruling, but the initial as it was put forth when the immediate past president was in office, so that we can ensure all of our listeners fully understand DACA as it is?
Sure. DACA, as I mentioned, DACA is a program, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, where basically in order to apply for it, you had to be under the age of 16 when you got to the United States. You had to have entered the United States when the policy, when Obama issued the policy. And now you still have to be under the age of 31 to apply. So you might have been here when you were 4 years old, and you might have entered the country in 2002, but if all of a sudden you are 32 years old, you are no longer eligible for it regardless. So it really helped all of the kids, essentially, who were brought here as children, or their parents crossed the border with them, or for whatever reason, they don't have status or a lawful entry in order to apply for some other type of relief. So it's really the only relief that some people have, some young people have, and it's the only thing that allows them, like I said, to work, to drive, to do the basic things you need to live your life in the United States.
Right. Okay. Thank you for so doing. What about, Jillian, removal proceedings, the COVID court, and the consulate update? Can you give us any information on that?
What's fascinating about how COVID's affected the immigration courts is they took a really long time to close the courts. In New York, people were very upset about this because obviously people were coming from all over the world. It's very, very crowded. So in March, they closed basically all of the courts across the country. And since then, they have been slowly reopening in some places. New York, New Jersey, a lot of the hotspot COVID places are still closed right now. Since about June, every week, they keep saying, we will have an update for you next week. And then next week, they just keep delaying it by another week. But what is interesting is that before, even before the pandemic started, these cases were backlogged in some courts for 2 to 3 years. When I was in court last in New York, it was in early March, and my next hearing in that case isn't until 2023. So even then, before the pandemic started, we were looking at, 2 to 3 year wait times in a lot of the courts. And now that they've had to cancel hundreds of thousands of hearings throughout the country, if not millions, because in one courtroom, one judge might see 200 immigrants between the hours of 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. And every single day in every single courtroom in every city, basically, this has all now been delayed. And again, some of the courts are reopening and they're rescheduling these cases. But for some people, they might have been waiting 5 years already for their next hearing. Wow. And now we don't even know how long it's going to be when they start reissuing hearing notices for all of these cases that have been canceled. Same thing with asylum interviews at the DHS offices and the asylum offices. So many of those have been canceled or postponed. All of the consulates throughout the world are still closed. So if you do have an approved visa, for example, you can't get it issued yet. So you are still stuck outside, essentially. Same thing if you just want to come here as a tourist or a student. It's really hard to have the new visas issued now. So this has put so many people's lives on hold. And this isn't even talking about all of the student visa issues that they've had, because, sure, if you guys are aware, but recently the administration basically made it that if you're a student and you're coming here on an F1 visa, if your classes are being held entirely online, then they basically said none of those people can come to the United States. They did rescind this policy because so many people and businesses and companies and states and universities collectively flipped out about it. So it has been rescinded for students. But it created all kinds of headaches for people because, just because your classes are online, that doesn't mean in foreign countries that you have, 24/7 access to internet, for example.
Right.
Or if your class was being held at 2 p.m. in New York, then if you were in Australia, your class is going to be held in the middle of the night, where you still have to effectively show up. So that caused all kinds of headaches, but after the uproar about it, they have rescinded that. So students can come here still, regardless of their online classes or in-person classes. But it is just, the pandemic obviously has created so many problems for so many people in much, much more important ways, honestly, than immigration, obviously. So many people have died, unfortunately. But in immigration, it has also created a horrible, horrible curveball for a lot of people who, plan their lives around this, whether they were coming here for jobs, whether they were coming here to get married, whatever reason that people were planning to come here and start to build a life, lawfully is what I'm talking about in terms of you had a visa approved and issued.
Right.
Those people are all now just waiting to eventually be able to go to the consulate and get these visas issued. And nobody knows yet when all of this will start to reopen. And health-wise, we're still in a very precarious place, so I'm not sure if it would be safe to do that yet. But hopefully we will start to see the curve tremendously flatten across the country and across the world, so we can start issuing visas and get immigrants here again, because they are an important part of our economy, a tremendous part of our economy that I think people often underestimate, just how much immigrants pay in taxes, just how much they contribute, and how important part of society they are in terms of everyday life. And until there are, significant health changes and the consulates open again, everything is still on hold that way too. So many, many different aspects of immigration are all up in the air right now in a way that's very frustrating and very scary for so many people.
Well, I can understand from the aspect of COVID and the pandemic, I'm sure you as well, and the resurgence and the non-compliance all around. But within all of that, have you heard, is there any consideration then to a workaround, for example, perhaps such a, let's call it Zoom court or what have you then, to get certain things done so that one doesn't show up in person? I know, for example, there are those, which is a totally different topic, but just by reference, where some individuals, they're now able to have Zoom weddings, for example. So wondering if there's a COVID court and consulate via Zoom or otherwise.
I have been invited to a Zoom wedding in August. Yes, there are. For detained cases in particular, and I should have mentioned this earlier, detained cases are continuing throughout the country. So if you went, the immigration courts are under the Department of Justice, and specifically the Executive Office of Immigration Review, EOIR. So EOIR, in their updates, they've continued detained cases. So if you go on the EOIR page for, New York or New Jersey, it'll be updated that says, this court is closed except for filings and detained cases only. So all of that is being done basically by Zoom and by video conference. And that was even before the pandemic. A lot of those cases were being done by video conference. And that's sometimes frustrating for attorneys, because a lot of the times when you're representing a detained individual, you get to meet with them beforehand. You get to talk to them. It's not as easy to prepare for any hearing or case where the person is in prison for the time being, detained. And now with as they move more and more to video conference and Zoom hearings, essentially, it makes it much harder, because you can't just speak to your client. You can't say, "Judge, give me 2 minutes while I confer with, the respondent about whatever." So it's made cases go much quicker in terms of the detained cases, because the judges and DHS can get through them much faster. But it's made it much harder to represent people in a way. I don't think that they will move to that towards non-detained. They might in some places, but I think that just in terms of the volume of immigrants that most of the immigration courts see every day, to try to do video conferences for each and every one of them might be very difficult. Normally, in immigration court, you're either assigned a master calendar hearing, which is any hearing that isn't a trial, a status update, a check-in. And during a master hearing, there'll be 100 people might be scheduled that morning for a master hearing, and everybody's just first come, first served. For an individual hearing, which is a trial, that I could see maybe moving eventually to a Zoom conference. But still, it's much, much harder to represent people by video conference, at least immigrants, especially because you have to use interpreters and translators, and it's just everything takes longer anyway because you're often repeating it twice in English and whatever foreign language the individual speaks. But I see the courts, the majority of them, remaining closed for a while, especially as you see all, cases spiking, COVID cases spiking in states throughout the country. So unfortunately, I just think a lot of the removal proceedings in the courts are just going to be on hold for at least the foreseeable future. And in a way that might be better, because if we really want to end this pandemic, inviting hundreds of people from all over the world into a small room is probably not the safest way to go anyway.
No,
these are very difficult decisions. The administration, I have my feelings on the administration, but with this in particular, I don't think there's any winning situation. Really, all we can do is wait and see and hope that things get better, and then deal with the fallout and the tremendous backlog that's going to be waiting.
Yeah, because as you mentioned by reference, I think your next case in New York right now is in 2023, correct? Is that
well, for that one client, that's just when they got scheduled. But I have a dozen cases a month throughout the country that have all just been canceled since March.
And the uptick and the upsurge from this COVID has much to do with that. That's where we can...
Yes, what's really frustrating is one of my cases, and I might have mentioned this before because I call it my Super Bowl case. This family, they're the most wonderful family. They've been here since 2001, and their old attorney, back when I was still in law school in 2003, I was in college, they lost their case. And because they're such good people and they were all employed and they have 2 young twin daughters who are all-star students, they were allowed to stay here. They had something called a stay of removal every year for the past 8 years. And I've been working on this case since 2011. And finally, early this year in January, we found out that they finally reopened their case. So all 4 of them get another day in court and a chance to finally get lawful status here. And they were scheduled for August 14th. And in 2018, DHS had deported the father. Even while their case was pending, they sent him back to Ecuador.
Oh, I remember.
And now when we got this reopening, DHS has to bring him back, and they have to pay to bring him back because they screwed it up. And they were supposed to be scheduled for August 14th, and the whole family has been dying for this date. I mean, they've waited 17 years for this date. And we just found out it was postponed as well. So now we just have to wait and see. They're still in a good place. Their case is reopened. It's the best we can hope for. But it was the most excited I've been probably to ever go to court with this August 14th hearing.
Right.
And now that's been postponed too. And I am sure this is just one of my hundreds of clients. I'm sure there's thousands and thousands of people throughout the country who are unfortunately experiencing the same sense of hopeful but disappointment ultimately, because now they have to just keep waiting. And again, we don't know what's going to happen. All we can do is hope that the court gets everybody scheduled, as soon as they can.
Right.
But again, they were 3 years out. I can only imagine what they're going to be in a couple of months. I think that some court dates are going to take 5 years to get, essentially.
Speaking of which, adjustment waivers Where is the federal law on that now? What's the details?
So adjustment of status is basically the formal term for getting a green card. When you adjust your status, you adjust to become a permanent resident. So adjustment of status can be through marriage, through employment, through asylum. Once you've been an asylee and you've been in the United States for 365 days after you've been granted, then you can also adjust status as an asylee. Right now, these cases are still being processed, much slower, and the interview portion of a lot of the cases has been postponed or put on hold. But, if you are in a relationship with a U.S. citizen or a green card holder and you want to get married, you still can do that and apply for a regular marriage case. The same thing is true if you need to renew your work permit, if you need any kind of basic procedure through U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, that you can still apply for, and they are still slowly but surely processing cases. So I don't want to leave the impression that everything in immigration is on hold, because it isn't. So if you do have, if you do think you might be eligible for relief in some way, maybe your U.S. citizen child is now over the age of 21. Maybe you got married or you're in a relationship. Or you are a minor and your parent became a U.S. citizen. All of those cases you can still process and apply for. So, some things are still moving forward slowly but surely. And in a good way about those cases, because DHS can't schedule interviews, they're waiving a lot of them. So, for example, naturalization, which I know that we're going to touch upon, but citizenship, you can still apply, and you will eventually have to take the oath, and you will eventually have to take the citizenship test. But right now, all of those interviews are placed on hold. A lot of marriage cases, which you file on something called a Form I-130. USCIS is still processing marriage cases and I-130s and not scheduling as many interviews as they had before. So if you do think that you might be interested in pursuing something in immigration, you should definitely speak to an immigration attorney, because there might be something you can do right now. In many cases, you might have to wait until the pandemic's over, at least in terms of anything related to court or consulates. But for now, in terms of in the United States, there are a bunch of things you can do if you're interested. And one of those is, like I was saying, adjustment of status. And why I tied waivers to that is because what a lot of people don't realize is this Obama-era policy, and I have not been able to figure out, and I hope nobody from the administration is listening, why for the past 3 years they have not taken this policy away. They've gone after DACA for the kids, but they have not gone after the I-601A waiver policy. And that is basically a waiver it's basically a waiver for your unlawful presence, i.e., if you cross the border. So in the past, before Obama passed this policy, if you crossed the border and then let's say you marry a U.S. citizen, you can eventually get a visa, but you need some kind of waiver to waive you crossing the border and then your unlawful presence that you accrue while staying here without status. So in the past, in order to apply for this, you used to have to go to your home country, apply for the waiver there, and then it would take anywhere from 8 months to 3 years for them to process this waiver, during which you would be stuck outside and away from your family the whole time. So just to give you a practical example, let's say you're a father who came here, in 1998, you crossed the border. Now you're married to a U.S. citizen, you have multiple children, you have a job, a business, whatever. You can't just pick up and leave for 1 to 3 years. People can't afford their lives. They don't want to be separated from their loved ones. So in that situation, a lot of people just didn't pursue anything because they'd have to leave the country and be stuck there until their case was approved. So Obama, it was passed in 2014-ish, he created this policy where once your marriage case is approved in the United States, Rather than go home to apply for this waiver, he changed it that you could apply within the United States. You wait here the whole time until it's approved.
Okay.
And then once it's approved, then you make a consular appointment and you go home, ideally for, 2 to 3 weeks. Sometimes it takes longer, but the whole point is that you can go home, get your visa issued, and then come right back. And when you come back with that new visa, you enter the country as a green card holder, and they mail you your green card in 30 to 60 days. So this changed so many people's lives because it allowed them
to stay together.
To basically adjust status and well, not adjust status, consular process, but get their green cards through marriage and spend the majority of the time in the United States with their families and jobs and regular lives. And you can still apply for this waiver. The issue right now is that even if it's approved, you then can't make a consular appointment to go get the visa issued because all the consulates are closed due to COVID.
Oh, okay.
So you might be eligible for a green card right now, and you can start this process and apply for everything. You just won't be able to finish the process until the consulates reopen. But this is a policy that has helped millions of people and is just, it's very, very beneficial. Again, the only thing the waiver waives is your unlawful entry and your unlawful presence. So let's say that, you do have an arrest in your past. Depending upon what that arrest or crime was, it may or may not make you ineligible for this waiver. If it is a serious crime, if it's violent, if it's drug-related, if it's weapon-related, most likely you're not going to be eligible for this waiver. Same thing with fraud. Let's say that you didn't realize it, when you first got here in 1995 and you purchased a fraudulent Social Security number, for example, or you used fake documents to enter the country. That fraud would also make you ineligible for this type of waiver. You might be eligible for something else, but for this particular one, the only immigration violation you can have is that you crossed the border or entered the country without a lawful inspection or visa, and then you just stayed here, but you don't have any other major crimes or issues or problems.
And so, Julian, just to pause so that we're ensuring our listeners are able to distinguish between the two. The one you're speaking of that simply has to do with crossing the border only, is the I-601 policy, correct?
That is the I-601A policy.
Okay,
the A is important because that is what Obama created.
Okay.
There is a regular I-601 waiver without the A, and then that waiver is for the fraud that I was just talking about and for other issues.
Okay.
But for this, for people who cross the border and are married or want to get married, this I-601A policy, that allows you to basically fix the mistakes in your past and get a green card and be able to move on with your life.
Okay.
Which in the past, you basically were not able to do.
Okay, thank you. 1 second, Julian. All right, brothers and sisters, listening hosts, for those of us that may be taking notes and seeking to get an immigration law attorney with either of the two matters, as our expert attorney has just explained, I want to be sure that any notations that you're taking is on point. Correct me if I'm off base, Jillian. I-601A policy is that for which you or a family member or friend have just simply crossed the border without proper paperwork. All else, fraudulent activities and so forth, when you meet with your attorney, then that would be the I-601 policy that you would be pursuing for assistance.
Good job, Janet, yes.
I'll come and work for you for 1 hour. How's that? I'm just joking anyway.
Yeah, you can work for me whenever you want. You're great.
Well, thank you. So, yes, continue, Jillian. Let's see.
I mean, that's basically the policy. It's just this is one of those things that a lot of people who, immigration is extremely complex, even as an immigration attorney. And I'm sure if anybody is confused, because this is a lot of information, you are always welcome to call me or email me. And I'm always happy to answer your questions for free. My email is Hopman, like my last name, HOPMAN, and then law, LAW, at gmail.com. That's my general address that anybody can contact whenever they want. So it's hopmanlaw at gmail.com. And if you have any confusion, questions, concerns, feel free to email me whenever. But this policy is one of those things that a lot of people don't know exists, that they don't realize, well, wow, I might be able to fix my life here.
Exactly.
So I just want people to be aware of that. If anything like that applies to you, it's definitely worth speaking to an attorney.
Yes. Okay, and let's see. We're now public charge rule we want to talk about as well?
Yes. So the public charge rule was a Trump administration policy that passed in originally 2018, then got implemented in 2019. And what it said essentially was that if you were applying for adjustment of status, so again, anything green card based or related, and particularly marriage related cases, if you had ever collected any kind of public benefits, Medicaid, food stamps, welfare, housing vouchers, if you had collected more than 12 months of that in the prior 3-year period, then the Trump administration would label you as a public charge, and essentially you then became ineligible for a green card.
Okay, Ken, wait, before you go on.
In the public charge rule about health insurance, that they now require you to have, if you don't already have health insurance, then an approved plan to begin getting health insurance.
Okay, Jillian, can you do me a favor? Jillian?
These two rules really hurt a lot of people's cases. In the past, even if you were lower income or you didn't earn a lot of money, you were able to get basically something called a co-sponsor. And somebody, a family, a friend, some U.S. citizen or green card holder would essentially vouch for you and say, here, government, here are my tax returns and my employment information, and I am willing to help support this person if they ever require government assistance before they become a citizen. So even if you were lower income or struggling or just going through a rough time, it wouldn't have prevented you from getting a green card as long as you knew somebody else in your life who was willing to help you out. The Trump administration changed that, and they basically implemented this public charge rule that, it has harmed so many people, and I just think that it is fundamentally something, the whole point of the U.S. immigration system, we aren't a merit-based system. We are a family separation system where we try to unify families and bring them together. That was how immigration's been here for centuries. And this new rule, the public charge rule, basically prioritizes people who have more money and more income and a better jobs. And it has been incredibly frustrating, both as an attorney and to see people who are otherwise wonderfully great individuals who should be part of our country not be able to pursue their immigration cases simply because they don't have the right amount of money or health insurance or other skills that the Trump administration has now prioritized. And this has been going on for the past, year or so. And then recently, it was just a couple of weeks ago, a federal judge, Judge George Daniel in the Southern District of New York, he basically came out and he issued 2 very strongly worded rulings that basically said that the public charge rule has to be put on hold because during COVID and the pandemic and the economy crashing and everything else, this is an untenable standard to require immigrants to meet right now. And he issued a second ruling that's tied to it that also says that about health insurance, that, basically he has put on hold the public charge rule entirely. So for now, DHS cannot decide cases or deny them based on public charge related issues, whether it's health insurance, whether it's that you did get public assistance or benefits in the past. And to be clear, those are federal benefits. So, state unemployment, if you qualify, would be different than getting federal welfare or Medicaid or housing vouchers. But the judge basically said that in this time period, right now especially, this is just an inhumane, cruel policy that does nothing except try to damage immigrants and does. And thankfully, he put it on hold. So if those issues were preventing you from applying for something in the past, now you do have a window of opportunity to apply where these issues won't prevent you from getting a green card or moving forward with hopefully resolving your immigration issues.
Julian, I'd like to ask you too, if you would please. I'm going on the presumption that there's at least one person out there who's taking notes that it may apply to them and or a family member or friend. So if you'd be so kind to repeat those two basic public charge rules, how condensed or otherwise.
So the public charge rule, the basic rule is if you have collected any kind of federal public benefit in any regard, if you've collected 12 months of benefits out of the past 3 years, then you are considered a public charge now, and you would be ineligible for a green card under the policy. Same thing with health insurance, that if you do not have health insurance or you don't have an approved plan that shows you will start getting health insurance, you would also be considered a public charge. And what's especially frustrating about the health insurance issue, not just that we're in a pandemic, is that a lot of immigrants are not eligible for health insurance until they start their cases, until they get a work permit or a Social Security card or something that puts them in temporary status. A lot of them are not eligible to apply for health insurance. So it's made it so that so many people just are ineligible from the start to apply for adjustment of status or a green card. And now, thankfully, because of this judge, they've put a hold on both of those policies. And I will say, I do not, if Trump is reelected, that is one thing. If anything else happens, I see the public charge rule being quickly rescinded because it is an inhumane and just cruel policy that, again, benefits the wealthy and the well-off as opposed to just all races, religions, creeds. Like, that's the point of U.S. immigration, that anybody can come here, no matter your class, your status, whatever. And they have fundamentally changed that with the public charge rule. And thankfully, this judge has, at least for now, put it on hold. I'm sure that will be litigated up to the Supreme Court as well.
I would safely say so as well. Speak to us more about citizenship that we although we kind of touched upon it earlier today. Where are we on?
Yeah, there's not much more to add about citizenship. Basically, those cases are proceeding like normal. So, citizenship depends on how you got your green card. But in most cases, normally you have to have your green card for 5 years before you can apply for citizenship. And you're allowed to apply 3 months early, so you have to wait 4 years and 9 months. However, the exceptions to that are if you are married to a U.S. citizen and remain married to a U.S. citizen, then you get what they consider a privilege or benefit of applying for citizenship after 3 years. So then you could apply in 2 years and 9 months, 3 months early. And I strongly encourage everybody, anybody you know, if they have a green card and they are eligible to become a citizen, you absolutely should. And there's fee waivers in some cases for the filing fee, but I can't tell you how many clients I've had over the years where, they've had their green card for a decade and they didn't think anything would go wrong. And then all of a sudden they are in the wrong place at the wrong time, whether it's that they didn't know that the person that they were driving with had drugs in the car, or they didn't know, this happened to one of my wonderful women, they didn't realize that their husband had a gun, and as a U.S. citizen, he could have a gun, but she was not allowed to possess it or where he was hiding it in their house, and the cops found it. After having her green card for like 15 years, that woman then got put into removal deportation proceedings and basically had to start her case all over again because she didn't become a citizen. I don't know if you guys know the Real Housewives of New Jersey, the husband who got deported.
Yes.
Had he gotten his citizenship 1,000 years ago, he never, ever would have been removed, no matter what crimes you commit. You might go to jail. You might be there for decades. But at the end, you are going to come out and be able to go back to your life in the United States. And what so many people don't realize is that, you think you're good to go, you have your green card, you're not a bad person or a criminal, but you just don't realize how the situations that some people never see themselves getting into. And had they just become a citizen, they would have to deal with whatever, criminal issues or whatever and clarify it. But at least they wouldn't be put into removal and deportation and have to fight their immigration case too. So if you can become a citizen, not even just because you can vote and you get all kinds of, different benefits from becoming a citizen, if you can become one, you should do it selfishly to protect yourself, because then no matter what happens, I will come visit you in jail, but at least you won't be deported at the end of whatever stint you have to serve. And again, more people get into this situation than they ever thought that they would and never expected to be there. So if you can become a citizen, it is worth becoming a citizen.
I think you're speaking of proactive action, which I'm a strong proponent in every aspect of one's life that way. I do have a scenario question for you. It may or may not make sense, but first, as a subpart, is there such a thing as backdating one's green card, particularly at the backdrop of someone who has been on asylum for, say, X number of years, maybe even 10 years, and they've been working all along, and with the backdating then to get their green card, so ultimately they can then get their citizenship?
No, there's no way to backdate your green card. Like, the date your green card is issued is when your permanent residency starts. So, in the example you used, like an asylee, once you're granted asylum status, whether it's by DHS, whether it's in court, then once you've been in asylum status for 1 year, but you have to remain physically present for 365 days as well. So I always tell my asylees, you're granted, you can go travel tomorrow if you want, but if you wait here for 365 days, then you can get your green card, and then you're just done with this process. So if you've been an asylee, definitely apply for your green card if you've had your status for at least a year. But there's no way to go back in time. You have to take the action and then build up the amount that you need for citizenship. The same is true as if you travel. Like, in order to become a citizen, you have to have spent basically 50% of the previous 5 years in the country. So when you add up all the dates that you travel and whatnot, you have to show that you were physically present in the United States for 2.5 out of the previous 5 years. And you can't make any trip that's longer than 1 year would restart your naturalization citizenship clock.
Okay.
Or really, any trip over more than 6 months could cause you problems too. So you have to be careful when you travel. But no, you can't go back in time. That's why you should be proactive and become a green card holder or a citizen as soon as you can become one.
And I believe, it's just my personal opinion, but tell me professionally if you're in agreement or not, and why, either way, that given the tenuous environment we're in beyond COVID, beyond the pandemic, just politically as well, that is most prudent to do so as well in terms of acquiring one's citizenship.
I mean, I can't agree with you strongly enough. I'm always very careful about what I say politically on this show because I know that it's important to remain neutral.
Yes, thank you.
Without question, if there's anything, this is what I ask my clients sometimes, like, I will give you a discount, just go register to vote. Because your vote matters so much to all of your friends, family members, teammates, coworkers, whatever. You voting could have such a difference in millions of people's lives. So if you are eligible to become a citizen, I mean, it would be too late now to apply and get registered by November, but there's other elections coming too. So if you are a green card holder who can become a citizen, apply. If you are just here and you don't have status but you are eligible for a green card, apply. Without question, selfishly, it is in your best interest to protect yourself, just like you said, Janet, especially right now in these extremely tenuous, up in the air, complex times. And I could not agree with you more politically as well. You have to register to vote. It's going to make such a difference. It's not too late if you haven't. You can register basically in any state still, so please register.
Jillian, I want to thank you in many ways, but one thing I want to say is that I so adore you professionally as well, and I so respect the fact that you respect that indeed one of the main or the main purpose of our journey, our strength, is to educate, entertain, and inform, and to keep it Christ-centered. But in terms of confession of our truth, every now and again, depending on the topic we're discussing, it's necessary for us to give complete and thorough information, if you will, based on the topic, kind of gently tap upon something that's outside the bounds, because we want to give accurate and complete information at all times. That's our objective. So thank you for that as well.
Of course.
And most definitely, as well as our time is near to wrap up. Until the next
It
time.
always flies, Janet. It always flies.
So much so. See, it's because of your knowledge, your wisdom imparted on you, your talents and ability. And I'm not saying it flowered, because your work speaks for itself. Most definitely.
Well, thank you.
Boy, you never, ever disappoint us with giving the updates, and it's been great transparency and clarity as always, bringing us up to date with relevant issues regarding immigration law and the status, and so we're grateful, Jillian. And as we thank you for tuning in by dial, calling, or clicking to listen to Our Journey, Our Strength, a Christ-centered variety program, it's our hope you'll tune in next week during the 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time hour with family and friends. Jillian, do you have any final comments for now until the next time?
No, hopefully we'll have good updates next time I am back. Thank you guys so much for having me. And again, I hope everybody stays happy, healthy, and safe, especially during these crazy times. Go register to vote. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, yes, the same to you. I will call you shortly after we're off air, Jillian. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your weekend.
All right, thanks. Brothers and sisters listening, bye-bye. Brothers and sisters listening, host one and all, the immigration law changes, yes, and obviously staying abreast is most prudent, beneficial to one and all. You've heard detailed truth on this date from a specialist. Yes, pure, nothing but the absolute truth as to what is. And guess what? Wherever, and whatever, I do mean wherever we may be, reside within the 50 states, seek out an immigration law attorney. Doesn't matter whether it be Jillian Hoffman or otherwise, and they will be able to point you and direct you in the right direction as to resolving the matters that may exist for you, family, and or friends. And so as we journey through this week, may Lord God Almighty, Heavenly Father, Lord God, guide you and direct you in pursuit of knowledge, wisdom, guidance, and understanding in whatever areas as applicably needed for yourself, family, and or friends. And as we journey through, let's remember what the late James Dillett Freeman said. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. I'm Janet, your host. Be a reflection of that which you'd like to receive. To God be the glory. Buenas noches. Adios. Bonsoir. Au revoir. Kala Kineka. Adios. Later.